Welcome to the Romantasy Library.
Welcome to the Romantasy Library, everyone. I'm Kate Perkins. I'm your host. And today I'm interviewing Tessonja Odette. And she is the author of fantasy romance, fairy tale retellings, and epic romantasy. She loves writing about brooding fae royals and the fierce ladies who hate to love them. Welcome, Tessonja. I'm so excited and happy to be here with you. I just read A Rivalry of Hearts, which is out it's out in 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, June 12th, so really, really soon.
I absolutely loved it. I haven't read anything like it. It was a cozy romantasy, fantasy rom-com. It was the banter was hilarious. Like, just
I'm so glad you
funny.
liked it.
I did. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I've been working on my book all morning. The one I'm working on now has been a little bit troublesome. So I was like writing it like up until the very last minute. Like, I gotta get all the creative juices out now while they're working.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to meet with me. I'm sure when the creative juices are flowing, it's hard to stop. Or
well,
I don't know.
I'm so happy to be here. So
are you writing the new one with that same side character? Okay.
Yep, that's what I'm working on now.
Can I ask, and you might not want to share, but can I ask, like, why is it so troublesome right now?
This is a thing I've actually experienced before, but like I tend to forget the challenges I faced in the past until I'm facing them again. So the challenge with this book is that both of the main characters were introduced in A Rivalry of Hearts. And Monty, the male character, he was introduced in A Dream So Wicked. So I know him really well. Like I know this character so well. And even though Daphne is like still new to me, I still know her pretty well from Rivalry. And since this book is a standalone, it is such a challenge to take two characters that I already know who have a lot of backstories and a lot of things that I've built into their character already that maybe haven't made it on the page, and to start a brand new book with them. It's so different from starting the page one with two characters who've never existed on the page before. This happened with Heart of the Raven Prince, because Franco was from the Fair Isle Trilogy and Ember was from Curse of the Wolf King. And when I started, I was like, oh my God, like this is so hard. It's different from writing like a trilogy where like you're carrying on a story that's continuing, but this is starting a fresh story, but existing characters. It's just this weird thing that like my brain has to, like, it just has to jump through a little bit more hoops. And I already have like all these things that I really want for them. And like, so it's about already having expectations, but like having to drop some of them and having to just like go with the flow. It's weird. So Heart of the Raven Prince was super difficult book for me to write. And that's like one of my most beloved books from a reader's perspective. Readers love that book. So I keep telling myself that like, it's okay that this book is hard, because to be honest, A Rivalry of Hearts is the easiest book I've ever written. It was so much fun, so easy from the start. And I have to remind myself that just because this next book is hard does not mean it's going to be bad. Like as an author, that's like, it's so easy to compare myself to my past self and be like, but that one was so easy. What if this one's like not as good? But yeah, it's like, I've been here before and it turned out great. Like I can do this again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine too, making sure that you're keeping the backstories, like staying on top of everything and making sure that you are interweaving all of the backstory. Like, cause you're kind of, you've already been there before with those characters, but now you're putting them together in a brand new book. I can see how that would be difficult.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that half the readers are probably going to be coming straight from A Rivalry of Hearts, but some who like to just jump in to interconnected standalones at different starting points. Some people might be jumping into that book for the very first time, and I'm like, I need to introduce them from scratch. I can't just be like, oh, you know these people too, right? I'm just gonna like throw them in there. I have to like treat them like they're new characters. It's a weird thing.
That would be so weird. Yeah. And then what's the full title again of the Raven-haired prince?
Heart of the Raven Prince.
Yeah, Raven. Okay. I ordered that one on your Etsy shop. I'm excited.
Yay!
I think I got one of the special editions and
Ooh.
I can't wait. One of my friends got your special edition of a Dream So Wicked. So I'm excited to see
Those
that
ones
one
are really
too.
pretty. So
Yeah. I'm so excited to get them in the mail and to read that one too. But I am absolutely loving A Dream So Wicked right now.
yay!
I might be loving it just as much as a Rivalry of Hearts. And that one, I like just, it was so nice. It was a nice palate cleanser. I was laughing. The banter was so good. I was hooked.
I'm so glad
I
to
can't
hear
wait
that.
to talk more about these books. Yes. Okay. So, Tessonja, where are you from?
So I live in I live in Tacoma, but I usually just tell people Seattle because most people who know of Washington State are like, well, I don't really know Tacoma, but Seattle, everyone knows Seattle. So I say I'm a Seattle-based author.
Nice. Or were you born and raised there?
I was born in Orange County, California, but I only lived there for 2 years. The first 2 years of my life. So I don't remember living there, but I did still have family there. So I went back to California a lot, like during the summers. So when I was like growing up, I was like, I'm a California girl. I love the sunshine and the beach. And I still love the sunshine and the beach.
Uh-huh. So one of Katy Perry's songs.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so nerdy. Anyway, cool. So you've been in Seattle area for how long have you been there?
Well, I've been living like in the general Seattle-ish around area ever since. So it's been, I guess, 38 years. I'm 40. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. It's gorgeous where you live. I've been there a couple of times and
it is. And I forget because like I said, I love the sunshine and we get a lot of clouds and rain and I can get like kind of depressed around that time. And I'm like, gosh, why don't I live somewhere where there's like sun? And then I'll go travel and I'm like, oh, right. Like I do like the sun, but I also really like the forest and the trees and the mountains and all the green. I'm like, okay, you know what? I actually really like where I live. It's just maybe I need to make sure I take more walks outdoors during the like cold season and there's rain.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but I like what we have here.
Yeah. I'm like a plant, I need sunshine, but I also love the rain. I feel like Tacoma. Yeah, I think Tacoma is, I can imagine a gorgeous backdrop and so inspirational for writing. I don't know why I think that, but it feels kind of like perfect place to write because you are close to the mountains, right?
Yeah, we're close to the mountains. There's I really like having easy access to the beach, and there is like the beach is only like a 15-minute drive away. From my house, I can see the big landmark mountain. I can see Mount Rainier from my house, and just not too big of a drive to go to like a local park or like a hike or something. And I really love being in those like hike environments. They just feel so fairy to me. I'm like, yes, this is where you'd find a fairy portal.
Yes. Come find me now. Faye Hotman. Okay. So where does your name come from? Tessonja Odette.
So my name is from a funny story from my parents. My dad wanted to name me Tessie Ann, and my mom wanted to name me Sonia Murr. So like two very different name styles. And they combined them together. So my name is Tessonja Moran. So they just combined the first and middle name to make one whole name. So kind of a silly story, but there we go.
It's beautiful. And I feel like it is such a great author name.
I probably should have had a pen name because my name is so unique. So people can find me very easily. And I didn't think about that, but so no stalkers yet. So
it's good. A great name. I think it's beautiful. When did your love of writing begin, Tessonja?
I've been writing. I always wrote like little stories when I was younger. I loved just making up stories. But then I wrote my very, very, very first like full length novel when I was 18. And like, it was just such an experience of just starry-eyed wonder, being like, wow, writing books is great and fun and so easy because I wrote it in like a few months. And then came the crushing awareness of like, wow, you actually have to do so much more and you have a lot to learn. So it actually took me 15 years from writing that first book to actually getting to the point where I was ready to like publish a book. And I did end up publishing that very first book, but it went through so many different variations through those 15 years. Well, cause I would start writing it and be like, oh wow, my writing has improved a lot. So I'd rewrite it and then I would get really discouraged. I'd get so discouraged and be like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. I don't actually like research would really overwhelm me. But especially cause I'm talking about like, this was like almost 20 years at this point ago, like you didn't really have as many good internet resources. Like doing a Google search was not as good as it is now. Like now you type in like, how does blah, blah, blah work? And you get like all these results. But back then, like if I wanted to learn archery, I had to go take an archery class, which I did. And turns out that research, like I barely even use that, but there's something about like me needing to know how something works before I can write about nothing about what I learned. Like I just need to know that I like understand it. Like same thing with random things like boats. Like if I'm writing like a historical, cause I write like a historical inspired era. So if I need to, I'm like, well, they're on a boat, but I'm like, how does a boat from that era even work? Like, is there a steering wheel? Are there levers? Like I need to know. And then I never write a single thing about it, but like I have to picture it so that I can like write the details or whatever. So yeah, I would get really crushed by things like that. Like all those challenges were just super crushing. And also because I didn't have like a writing support group around me where I could like tell people like, hey, I'm struggling with this. And they could say like, oh yeah, me too. Like this is normal. Like we all struggle with that. And so that was what really made me actually get into publishing is entering the era where I could connect with other authors and realize that they were going through all the same things I was, having all these resources available to learn how to publish and how to, you know, connect with other authors and connect with like how to connect with editors, even to get my book edited, because there's so many steps. So yeah, it's been a while.
That sounds like such a ride, Tessonja, that you wrote your first book when you were 18 and then it took multiple variations, versions, editing before you publish it. Now, which book is that?
So that's a funny story too, because that book was originally published in, I think it was 2017. It was called, I have to look at it right now. I'm like, what did I even call it? It was called Shadows of Layla. And I actually unpublished those books 2 years ago and I rewrote them again because after publishing books and finding my voice was totally different from even just writing a book that was like, oh, that's a good book. So when I started writing Fae stories, specifically when I started writing the Fair Isle Trilogy, I felt like I really found my voice and I really found the types of books that I wanted to write. And I looked back at that first book, which was such a like special place in my heart. And I'm like, I feel like I can make that better now. Like I've learned so much about who I am as an author and the types of stories I want to tell and just like being a better storyteller in general. So I actually went and rewrote those books and republished them. They're so different, but like the same, it's still that same kernel of story that I created when I was 18. And now I'm like, yes, this finally feels like I have like turn this trilogy into what I want to be. And that book is now, it's behind me, The Prophecy of the Forgotten Fae trilogy. So the first book is, A Throne of Shadows. So it's taken on a new life. And now I'm like, yes, this is the version of the story that it was always meant to be.
That's awesome. I also ordered the Aurora crate of that one.
Oh, that one's going to be pretty.
So it sounds like you've also had a pretty strong writers community you also mentioned that too, as you were talking of having like a solid group of authors that you connect with. And
that's been like one of the most important aspects of like my author career. Whenever people ask like, what are your tips for like becoming an author or like getting published? That's always like my number one is finding at least one other author, but preferably like a small group of authors who are writing the same or similar genre, who are at a same or similar level with their career where you are right now and have the same goals of where they want to go. Because then you can brainstorm together and you can analyze like trends or genres together and and have people to like support you, and you have like similar goals, so you are working together for the same thing. And just having that is so important. And I got really lucky in finding mine, because sometimes, like, how do you find that? Sometimes you have to like just put yourself out there and be like, I'm looking for this, like, will you be my friend? But I got really lucky in that I just so happened to get swept into one, because it started as like an author like Instagram engagement group, and we're like, oh yeah, let's do this engagement group, and that fizzled out really fast. But a lot of us stuck around. We're like, well, why don't we become a mastermind? Let's all take this, like, we've gotten to know each other really well from just being an engagement group. Like, let's go and actually talk about things like writing craft and like the struggles we're having, or the new cool things we're discovering that might help each other. So it's been really amazing. It's just so important to have that support and to know you're not alone, because being an author is like a lonely job. You don't have like coworkers or anything.
Yeah, I can imagine that it would feel, or that it could potentially feel lonely, and having that community sounds like it's been really impactful for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think Instagram, it seems like that's been a really great tool, or a helpful platform for a lot of groups.
I love Instagram. I know there's people who like hate it sometimes, but I just really like it. It suits me really well. I'm a very visual person, so I'm like, I could just post a picture and express myself that way. I really like that.
Yeah. And earlier too, you were talking about that it is a romantasy, fantasy, romance vibe, but obviously genre. And though it is a historical era, I feel like, well, at least the two books that I'm reading right now. And I did notice that as well when you were saying that, like, the piece of you wanting to better understand something before you write it, right? Like how a boat works or whatever. Like, I was wondering about that too, because there was that aspect of, like, I'm not talking well today, historical era themes throughout your books of, like, how did you do that, with research? So how did you research some of that?
The fun thing about this is that, like, I'm actually really intimidated by like true historical fiction or historical romance, because like your readers are going to be very like strict on whether you got the history right. And I'm really intimidated by that. Maybe someday I will. But the thing I love about my Fair world is that I can really take some liberties. My world is inspired by like the Regency era, the Victorian era, the Edwardian era, and I even dabble into like the 1920s. I'm like, you know what? It's my world. There's magic. I can bring in advanced technology and sprinkle it in, even if maybe they wouldn't have had it in like this era, but like I could pull it in here, because guess what? There's magic. We can do a lot. So I had a lot more like resources available, because I'm like, okay, so what kind of dress do I feel like this ball is going to have? Is it going to be a little more subdued? Are we going to keep things a little more Regency? Are we going to get a little bit racier toward the flapper girl fashions that were starting to come in like the 1920s? Are we going to have some like bare shoulders, and that's going to be like a big deal? So okay, fashion is something that I love. Like, I love historical fashion. I have like books on historical dresses. And if I usually end up having to like look up like a certain era dress. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some inspiration. I like construct the entire garment in my head, and then like I write a few details about it. But like, that's one of my favorite parts of historical is the fashion. And just getting to play with so many different eras, since I give myself that like pretty wide container to work with. But yeah, and even the like how the buildings look and the types of like horse-drawn carriages. I have automobiles every once in a while, like they call them automobiles or motor cars. Yeah, it's really fun. So I do, whenever I need to like look something up, I'll look up and I'm like, okay, well, what serves like this story better? I'm like, do I want to look up the Edwardian version of this or like the Victorian version? So yeah, I do a lot of research, and it's a lot of fun.
That is fun. Yeah. And A Rivalry of Hearts, noticed like, they had like a train, and I did notice some of the fashion. I feel like you really paint a picture of your world very well. Like, I felt immersed in the story
That is good to hear.
Yes. And I noticed the fashion piece too, which is so cool that you actually construct that like in your mind. Like you design the garments and then you describe some of it. I was wondering how that worked because you did a great job of describing Edwina's dresses. Am I saying her name right?
Her dresses were really fun, especially the one from the elevator. Like her elevator dress is like my favorite outfit from that whole book.
Would you ever like post or have you posted any of those designs or have somebody like design it for you and then post them on Instagram or I don't know?
The closest I have is I have done some of my own character art where I will, I'll get to like show how I picture the dresses. So that has been really fun. And then also like when I get art commissioned by other artists, I'm like, here's what the dress looked like. And I'll like explain, like, you don't have to actually make it look like this, but this is how I describe it in all the details. But that would be really cool to actually like have constructed any of these dresses. And there is like one of my favorite cosplayers. I actually met her at Comic-Con. Her handle is Erica Alamode, and she has actually done, I think she's done Astrid, and she showed me a picture of like her idea that she has for a Maisie dress. So she's gonna she's gonna work on that. I'm like, oh my gosh, Maisie from Heart or Kiss of the Selkie, by the way. I'm just like throwing out names. Like, just gonna throw that out there. But yeah, she has a really gorgeous dress, and she showed me some like pictures when I saw her at Comic-Con this year of like her ideas for it. And I was just like fangirling so hard. I'm like, you're so cool. And I love like all the dresses she does. And like, I can't wait to see that. So some like, that's really cool. And other people totally take that on their own and do it. I'd love to see more of that.
That is so cool. And it's interesting that you say that you were fangirling for her, where I'm like fangirling right now. I can't believe I'm talking to you. It's so fun being able to talk with the author of these books that I'm loving.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so what inspired, I guess, this particular genre and these worlds for you?
This genre, definitely by my love of like Jane Austen, anything Regency. I've always loved the era from Regency to the Edwardian era. I grew up on Anne of Green Gables. By the way,
I'm so sorry I'm interrupting you. I grew up with that too. I just turned 39, so we're about the same age.
Oh yeah.
And I loved those stories. Sorry for interrupting. And like
they were so
like
good.
The original movies. Loved it.
I rewatched those. I rewatched that whole miniseries right before I started A Rivalry of Hearts, because I knew that those characters were going to have like really strong Anne and Gilbert like rivalry energy, and their appearances. Like they look like, I imagine both of the characters like looking like the Anne and Gilbert from that original miniseries. So I watched that again. But yeah, that era, I love that like the society rules and the courtship. It's just so fascinating because it's so different from what we have now. And I also really like playing with it by adding a little more like feminism and adding a little more female freedoms into the world, and having that be, you know, kind of the advancement of my Fae world. So that kind of really inspired at least the genre for my Fae books, and just the overall, I just love romance. I don't know if I'm really ever going to write anything that doesn't have like a romantic ending. I'm just obsessed with romance and happy endings. And like, that's like what I can say. Like people can always expect that. Even if I'm writing like my epic fantasy trilogy where it gets really stressful and things can get dark at times, I'm like, it's going to have a happy ending because that's just what I deliver. Like, sorry if you don't want a spoiler, but like main characters survive. I really make you worry. I make you stress. I try to break your heart a little bit, but things usually like they're going to have a happy ending because I love that. So, and yeah, I can't get enough of that in romance. Like I don't want to read a romance to get shocked and be like, oh my gosh, how shocking they didn't get together. I'm like, I just want to be, I like the predictability of the, like going through this romance story, knowing they're going to have a happy ending, but just like that stress of like, but wait a minute, like how's this going to happen? So
yeah, the journey of how they get there and their story makes it so unique. And I want a payoff at the end of it. And I'm also reading these stories so that I can escape, you know, and I'm okay to be like on an emotional ride an emotional journey because that helps me to be very invested in the story. But I absolutely want it to pay off in the end.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that about your books. And now that I know that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read all of the books expecting a happy ending.
Yes.
Hey yo, time for an ad. My friend Bree is the proud owner of Miles on Paper. It is an online bookstore where magic and adventure come to life through the pages of indie books. At Miles on Paper, they are passionate about connecting independent authors with readers, and they do this by curating unique blind date book bundles, custom book boxes, blind date puzzles, and a remarkable collection of traditionally published books. By the way, their blind date book bundles are so much fun. I had the honor of getting one myself. I highly recommend. You can find her website at www.milesonpaper.com. Check them out.
Did you go to school for writing?
No, I didn't go to school for writing. I did a lot of art. So I've always been the type of person that has like a billion hobbies. So I actually went to school, or I didn't go to school for art, but I did a lot of art classes in high school. I didn't do any like college art or anything, but I did continue to do art and I did continue to write. And I actually, got very sidetracked by music. I was in a few bands and I did singing and songwriting. So that kind of kept me from pursuing writing and art a little bit more because singing was something that was really available to me because I was around a lot of other musicians who were also in bands and it was just like more accessible to me. Whereas like writing still seemed like something that I couldn't quite figure out how to like break into.
Yeah. So you did bands, music, you were a singer.
Yeah. And I feel like that really helped shape my writing because like I did poetry before I ever did novels. Like I was the moody middle school poet. I loved my moody poetry, all about how hard life was and all my heartbreak that I'd never experienced. Like I definitely infused some of that too in A Rivalry of Hearts with the moody poetry. I'm like, oh, I was that girl.
Love
yep.
That.
But and then I feel like that really translated to songwriting. And then songwriting, I feel like really helps in my writing. Like it helps me like think of like, I don't know, there's times for lyrical prose. Most of the time I'm just like, let's just write. But every once in a while I'm like, this could be pretty here.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely resonate with the moody lyrics in middle school and elementary school. And I don't know if you ever had the one of Jewel's albums. There are some moody songs on
She was my jam.
Me too. My girlfriends and I, we went to Telluride for a film festival this past year, and we were listening to all of our old like moody songs from like high school and middle school, and Jewel made the list. And we were jamming out.
Yeah, she was like, lay on your bed and just be depressed. Like, I know, Jewel, I know. I've been there too at my 13 years of life.
Right. Okay, so which character would you say, if any, do you connect with the most or that you resonate with?
Definitely Edwina. Edwina was so like, I felt like, so I put a little piece of myself in like every character I write. It's just hard not to. It's just how I make them relatable and how I make them fun to write. Like the less a character is like me, the harder they are to write sometimes. So I'm like, or at least the less like, I don't know. There's certain characters where I'm like, I guess I relate to this one, but it's just like less fun to write. But Edwina was so like, I put so much of myself in her that at times it felt like kind of vulnerable and scary and weird. Like I'd be writing certain sentences and I'm like, this is just me talking. And I would like put me in this weird place where I'm like in my story and I'm like, wait, get out of it. Like, no, this is like a fiction. But it was this weird like enmeshment where I like really merged in with my story and the things I'm writing. And of course, like that's going to happen because it's about a romance author and it's about publishing. So it was like really easy to slip into that. But there's so much of her that is similar to me and the way my mind works. And like at times it felt vulnerable that I'm like, oh my gosh, people are going to read this. They're going to like straight up see me. Like they're going to see who I really am. But I mean, there are some parts of her that I don't relate to, but just seem fun to write. So that's the guessing game. Which version is me and which version is just her?
We'll never know.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you connected with her story, and I could see how, I mean, how could you not, you know, being an author of like romance novels and yeah, no, I loved Edwina. So I love you too, apparently. But I loved her. She's a hoot.
She's my favorite. Like, even though, you know, she's similar to me. I don't say this because of that, but she's my favorite character to write. She was very fun. I feel like I just gotta like let loose and I don't know, like not have to like think about her characters much because it was just so much like free flowing. So she was very fun to write. And I just, she's my favorite. I love her. I love all my characters though. Don't tell them that I have a favorite.
That'll stay between you and I.
Yeah.
No, she and anybody who listens to this, I guess. But yeah, she was really fun. That story is so refreshing. Your stories, I feel like, are very whimsical. You know, there's some whimsy.
I need whimsy. This is the thing like that I experienced recently when I was writing the first chapter of the new book, and I wrote the whole chapter, and then I like sat back and I'm like, not enough whimsy. There was no whimsy in that chapter. Like that was just a normal chapter, and I went through and rewrote it. Now there's whimsy.
I so appreciate that. I so appreciate whimsy, and that is why I love talking with authors. I love whimsical stories. And A Dream So Wicked is, oh my gosh, like the first page, I was like, okay, yep, I'm in it. This is so good. And it was it is whimsical.
That one has lots of whimsy too.
I love it. I'm here for the whimsy. So do you tend to be a plotter or a pantser? Or I met with A.K. Mulford a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And they were saying that there's another term called crocheting.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
I don't know if you want to explain some of your writing process.
So yeah, I'm like right in the middle, and I've heard the term, I think it was headlight. I think it was called a headlights plotter. So I need to know a certain amount. Like I do need to have a good idea of the story. And that usually takes me to the midpoint. Like I usually know most of the things are going to happen to the midpoint. And of course I know the ending, which is really vague, but I always know like couple's going to get together. That's the end. Like I know that's going to happen. And then I usually know some key scenes, most of which involve the smut or any kind of romance. Like those are the things I daydream of first and get the most excited to write. Like, oh, I don't care about their story. I just want to know how they're gonna, get together. So I'll usually know those things ahead of time, but I like to know a pretty good amount up to the midpoint. And like, I can try to plot after that, but a lot of things like happen while I'm writing where I'm like, oh yeah, then that happens. Like some of my favorite moments from A Rivalry of Hearts. I didn't know they were going to happen until I was writing them. And I'm just like, I couldn't have thought of that ahead of time. And I love it. Like, I'm going to tell you without spoiler, but there's a thing that happens where someone's writing something in a book to Edwina. It's very sweet. I didn't think of that until like, after like at a certain point, I was like, oh my gosh, like what if this happens? Like, what if this is how this sweet romantic thing happens? And so there's things like that I just can't plan ahead of time. So the second half usually feels like, wow, is this book going to end? I don't know what's going to happen. But once I get to that midpoint, that's like kind of the headlights plotting, is I can see my next few chapters and then I get there and then I can see, like, I journal my tomorrow's chapter the night before. So I just journal about like, I usually write my first few sentences, and that for some reason helps me write the whole chapter. And I'll usually know like a summary of what's going to happen in that chapter. But a lot of times those things can change, which can change what happens in the chapter after that. So yeah, I'm that kind of like, I do plot a little bit, and then there's a lot of exploration, and I do plot as I go after that. And sometimes I'll have to take a break where I'm like, okay, we're at the end. I need to actually plot like the last 10 chapters so I know what's going to happen. So it's kind of crazy and scary because I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen in this part, but I always figure it out.
So is it the creativity that helps you through it? Or like,
yeah,
how
I guess
does
so.
that
I feel
together?
like I feel like there's just a lot of that spark that comes from like just like the things that characters say, sometimes I'll have like clever banter in my head ahead of time, like, oh, that would be so funny if this happens. But a lot of times I'm just typing and then they just start like bantering back and forth. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Like I'm getting to know their personalities. And sometimes I'll discover things from that. Okay, for A Rivalry of Hearts and A Dream So Wicked, I knew when I wrote A Dream So Wicked that Monty was going to get his own story. 'Cause I fell in love with him right away. Like I knew people were going to hate him in that book, but I knew secrets about him where I'm like, well, I love him. Like he's amazing. Like I love him. He's super annoying in that book, but like reasons to be revealed, which I won't spoil anything for you since you're still reading it. But I knew he was going to get a romance in that book, and I knew it was going to come after A Rivalry of Hearts because I had the idea for A Rivalry of Hearts like right in the middle of this. But I did not know who his person was going to be until I was writing A Rivalry of Hearts. And I was writing it and I wrote an insult from another character. And I'm like, oh my God, are they flirting? Or like, I wouldn't have, like, I knew he was going to be with somebody, but then like, you know, I mean, what's more flirtatious than just like totally putting down some guy with like some massive insults? I'm like, whoa, it's getting a little hot in here. I think these people might like each other. So things like that happen where like, I couldn't have thought of that before. I couldn't have said, oh yes, so this book's going to be about these people, this book's going to be about these people. I figure that out while they're just talking to each other.
That is amazing. I will say Monty is presenting differently in A Dream So Wicked.
Yeah, very much.
It might be a little bit of like a hate to love type. But I really loved him in A Rivalry of Hearts. You know, and I could pick up on some of the Easter eggs there of like, okay, is there a connection here between these two characters?
Yeah.
And then at the end, I think you like say,
yeah,
right? You say in the end, like what the next book is going to be about.
I give a little teaser of where it's going. A little after teaser.
That. Mm-hmm. So how much? This is a rando question, but how much time has passed between like a Dream So Wicked? I'm just curious, timeline wise, or if you can even answer this, and then A Rivalry of Hearts, and then Monty's book.
So between A Dream So Wicked and A Rivalry of Hearts, I believe it's 1 year. Because I have to keep track of my timelines because I just have to. I'm pretty sure it's 1 year. And then from A Rivalry of Hearts to which I can just say it. I haven't done an official title reveal, but I mean, it is in the back of the book. So once you read the back of the book, you'll see it. It's called My Feral Romance. So surprise, you get the early title reveal.
You heard it here first, folks.
So between that one, it's a year and a half, I believe. So
okay.
Some time.
Will we see? Yeah. Nice. Will we see any of the characters from A Rivalry of Hearts in it? Or is it going to be a whole new cast of characters besides the two?
There could be some cameos, but I'm not sure. I haven't planned any out, but we'll see.
Yeah. So headlight plotter is what you said.
Yeah, and that's not a term I made up. I heard it and I'm like, you know what, that makes sense. You plot, you see the headlights, you know that far along and then you get there and then you see it a little bit farther. Yeah. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then it kind of leaves some room for exploration, creativity, growth, change, evolution versus like laying it all out.
And I can't do that. I don't know why. I just can't.
It's so interesting talking with different authors and seeing how certain authors write. I mean, the end product is always amazing, but how you guys get there is so interesting.
Yeah, and like there's no wrong way. Like there's some people like, no, but this is the right way. I'm like, but there really isn't though. And that's like the thing you have to embrace is like, there isn't a wrong way to do it. Don't feel bad about yourself. You're doing it a way where people are like, oh yeah, I don't do that. I'm like, well, that's okay.
That's okay. You do it. You do you, boo. And I'm going to do me, That's awesome. And earlier you were saying too that the smut and the romance is very important. But it was interesting because you said something like the story will come, or I don't know. I'm paraphrasing. It's interesting because how you have like the smut kind of figured out and what you want to include. However, like in A Rivalry of Hearts, and I'm assuming too in A Dream So Wicked, these characters fit so well together. So yeah, how do you do that? Like the story though, and like that connection between the two characters, they seem to fit really well.
Yeah, and like I usually know at least my characters' personalities, like kind of around the same time where I'm starting to imagine them having their like romance scenes, and there's some times where I will have one where I'm just so set on it. I'm like, this steamy scene is going to be so good, but then by the time I get there, I don't want to do it anymore because I thought of a better one. And that happened with A Rivalry of Hearts. I had a totally different steamy scene that was going to take place where, for those who know, the elevator happened. It was going to be a different scene. But then like a few chapters before I wrote that, I'm like, oh no, we're going to have an elevator scene. And so that one replaced it. And like, I was like, well, I could fit that other one back in, but I'm also very much like when I write my romances, there is progression. There's usually like steps forward, steps back. And I felt like if I was going to put that other steamy scene in afterward, it was just going to stay at the same level. And I really like to go for growth. And, you know, sometimes there's setbacks. So I just didn't put that scene in because I felt like it wasn't going to actually serve the story. And I felt like I'd rather get to their next big steamy scene instead of like, you know, trying to stay at like the same level and just having like the steamy scene for the sake of it, just because I liked it. I do still want it to, progress the relationship. And like, and I'll also say I'm not like the steamiest author. People who've read like my backlist, like some people call my books, which to me are very much not fade to black. They show the things on the page, but they're just not explicit. Some people call them fade to black because they're so used to much spicier books. So I'll even say that much, like I'm not the spiciest writer, but I do love steamy scenes. I love writing them. Even the ones that are like less so spicy. I just love them. They're so fun. And love confessions. Love confessions are like the thing I just dream over for like the whole time I'm writing my book. I'm like, I cannot wait to get to a love confession.
I love the love confessions too. And it really paid off in A Rivalry of Hearts. And that one scene that you were trying not to spoil.
Yeah.
With my heart. It was so swoon worthy. Oh my gosh. I was swooning. It was so good. So yeah, so it sounds like for you, the smut, it also, and the spice, helps progress the story, the plot, and the character's relationship.
Yeah.
As a romance author. And
I'm such a slow burn writer too. Even when I try to do like slightly faster burn, like A Rivalry of Hearts, I'm like, oh, this one's going to be a little bit faster burn. And like, no, it's still slow burn. Like I have so many like reviews, people like, oh my gosh, I was just dying for it to pay off and it finally did. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just like, I'm a forever slow burn girl and I love the slow burn. I do. I really love it.
I love it too because of the tension
that
it builds. And then when it happens, you're like, oh, yes. Like the love confession is there and it really pays off. Which is interesting because with The Rivalry of Hearts, right? Like even though it was slow burn, it was still like, didn't take place in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like this. But it did feel so slow burn. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's like, oh wait, but the timeline really.
Yeah, the timeline, it was only a matter of weeks. And that's another funny thing for me is that like, I know some readers like really don't like when it takes place like quickly time-wise. Like when you can look back and see a romance that people fall in love with in like 2 weeks, they don't like it. But for me, I've always experienced very fast love. So to me, that's like that's not unreasonable to me. Like I've fallen in love fast. I've had people fall in love with me fast. I'm like, no, that's just like regular life for me. Like it just happens sometimes. Sometimes it's crazy and sometimes it's not good, but
yes, it can be toxic. So in your personal life, you've fallen in love quickly. Like, are you a love at first sight type person or
not
is it just
a love
like
at first sight? But I have like, for example, my husband, he gave me a birthday present on Halloween. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's so like, I think I like might be interested. And then by November 11th was when he said he loved me. So that was like 11 days. And we didn't know each other before then. It was a workplace romance. We worked at Trader Joe's together. But so we knew each other, but it was like us actually realizing that we were like compatible or like falling for each other happened really fast because we'd both been in other relationships, not interested in each other at all. Just like this guy who works here, like no thanks. But like when it happened, it happened. And so, and you guys, I have to tell you the book, or I have to tell you the present he got me, because that will help you understand why this 11-day of romance happened. Well, it was, so I told him what my favorite book was of all time. And I told him that I had let a friend borrow it and I never got it back. He bought that book and read it.
No, he did not.
And gave it to me. And I was like,
no way.
Like, how is that? Like, how is
Who
that
is
even
this
real?
person?
Right. So
how is it? Yeah. That's like a character out of your book.
Exactly. And so I was like, well,
that's like William.
Okay. I guess this is happening.
I guess you're a keeper. Yeah. Oh, I love that. What year was that in? When did that happen?
Let's see. Oh, I have a picture on my wall that says like the day I said I love you. It's one of those like star chart things, because I forget dates, cute. But it says 2016.
Nice.
And we were married in 2020. We had a nice pandemic wedding with very few people at it, which is ideal.
Yeah. That was a crazy time. So you got married during the pandemic.
Yeah.
How many people were at your wedding?
I don't actually remember, but it was very few. Okay. And it was in my mom's backyard. And yeah, just like a couple close friends, like none of our extended family could like fly out, but we did do like a video, like my mom made a video of it and I got to like share the video with the people who couldn't come in person. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of energy for like large events. So it's like a small wedding where like hardly anyone can come. Like that sounds amazing.
That does sound amazing. Our wedding was larger than, yeah. I kind of wish that ours was smaller too. But, you know, when you marry your person, you marry your person.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So you mentioned too that you said that not everybody was able to fly in. Is your family or his family, where are they located? His
family is in Arizona, and
okay.
A lot of my extended family is in California.
Okay. So they're still...
Yeah, and Colorado. So we've got like a couple other like a lot of our family is out of state. So
nice. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a brother, and then I have extended family from my dad's side who I don't really see, but I do have 2 brothers and a sister over there, and I just haven't seen them in a really long time. But my brother I grew up with, and he lives here. Not with me in this house, but he lives here in the city. So I do see him regularly.
Nice. Are you guys pretty close?
Yeah. And I actually, for a really long time, we did all live in the same house. I was like, I really liked having, living with my mom and, my brother and my husband and my child, like all in the same house. It was pretty fun. But now I have my own house. I bought my very own house. So I'm like, am I an adult now? Like I'm 40. I think I finally starting to feel like an adult.
You've arrived. It is a big feeling of accomplishment when you buy a house. But I can imagine that you feel that way too when you publish books. Good Lord. Like that is a big deal. So you have a kiddo too. How old is your kiddo?
She is going to be 13 in October. So we're getting into the teen years. It's been pretty fun. She got her very first short haircut yesterday. So that was a really fun, like pivotal moment. Cause I think a lot of like teen girls go through that phase. They're like, I want to do something like drastic. Like they'll either do like hair color or a really short haircut. That was the age when I first dyed my hair blonde. So, it was a fun moment to get to be there for.
Nice. Yeah, we have a 13-year-old too.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Wanting to express herself as well. So it's an interesting age.
Yeah.
Age. Yeah. What goals and intentions do you tend to have for your characters?
I want them to experience healing and growth. Like my characters always have at least some belief or something in their past that like holds them back from really living like the best version of their lives. And for most of my books, I have this expressed through like, for the romance, like the romance usually helps shine a light on something that they haven't dealt with or healed from yet. And I especially like to do it for both characters if I can, like having them both have, a way that they help each other step into like the better version of themselves. So that's like really, really important for me when it comes to like the character development. I don't know. I just like giving them like hard backstories. And they're not always like super tragic or traumatizing, but there's always something that makes them believe something about themselves or how they interact with people or in like the world that just like they're not stepping into like their full potential. So that's like the most important thing for me to express through their character.
Yeah, I love that. Do you do any research for that, or like what is that process like for you to be able to create those backstories? I am a therapist and I've talked about this in a different podcast, but I love backstories and I can see that healing component in your books, and I find that incredibly empowering and lovely and beautiful. I love a good character arc and growth and healing and empowerment. Like I love all of that. How do you go about deciding that? Or
it's kind of a slow dance, because sometimes I'll think I know what their flaw is or what their misbelief is. But then when I start writing, it maybe will take a different shape and I'll need to go back and rewrite that a little bit. Cause there are some times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what like their big thing is in their past. And I'll have to go and like change that around a little bit and then maybe throw some more breadcrumbs into the story to help that really take shape. But there's other times where it just really seems to fit. Like sometimes I need to think of it in a different way of like, okay, so these characters need to arrive at this place together. What is the thing they're going to heal from to get there? Like what fits in with the story really well. So it really just depends. Like sometimes I start the story, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what this person's like backstory is. Like with Edwina, it was really easy. I'm like, okay, I'm like, before I even started writing, I'm like, this is what happened in her past that made her think this way about romance and why she's not interested in romance. But then for William, I had to think, that one took a little bit more planning. I was like, okay, so what's his reason for like not being interested? Because the thing I've learned about my books is I really don't like writing characters who actively want a relationship, which is so weird because I've always been like very much like very like floaty for like romance. Like I love romance. I'm a serial monogamist. I've always been in relationships. I've always been the person that like happily wants to be in a relationship. So I'm like, I don't like writing characters like that, which I discovered very recently. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that about myself. Like I like writing characters who specifically don't want to be in a relationship. It's just really fun to write that way, to like could change their mind and convince them.
That is really interesting. And that you discovered that you've recently discovered that.
Yeah, I discovered that literally a couple days ago because one of my characters, I was going to have her like specifically want to be in a relationship, and there was going to be some fun hijinks that were going to go with that. And I just like, it like crushed my soul. I'm like, I don't like this at all. I hate it so much. And so I was like, okay, so how could I have her do the same hijinks but not want to be in a relationship? And so I had to figure that out because I was just like not having fun. I was just like, no, we're not writing this character.
That's so interesting. Do you think, did it touch something that like, did it strike you close to home, I guess?
It might have. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking is maybe it's like the piece of myself that I don't want to write about. Like I don't want to write about the version of me who was always like so desperate for love and trying to like make relationships happen even when they were toxic, you know, because I was definitely that girl. So I do think like on that, like, let's do a deep dive level, that it probably struck like something that I don't really want to like not so much I don't want to face it because I do know it's there, but it's just like no, I don't want to express that in a character. Like that's not fun for me.
Yeah, or maybe examine it through a character right now.
Yeah.
And you pivoted.
Because there's some flaws that are like, or some like maybe aspects of myself that I don't like that are really fun to explore with a character that feel like, I don't know, they feel like a really fun challenge or like a really interesting way to like make friends with that flaw. But this one I was just like, no, we're not going to go there.
Been touched a little too close to home.
Yeah.
What are some of the pieces that you enjoy writing or exploring that?
So for example, Edwina has a lot of traits that I would relate to, like autism or ADHD, which I am not officially diagnosed because adult diagnosis is really hard. But once I started looking into that for myself, my whole life makes sense. Like everything about my childhood makes so much sense. So I do have a goal of getting officially diagnosed. But yeah, I got to express a lot of things through Edwina that like are like things that like are that I deal with. I did similar things with Astrid from A Taste of Poison. She had a lot of like sensory things. And like, so those things are more fun. Like those things are fun for me to express. And there's a couple that I'm going to get to express with Daphne in my next book too. And then also just like, I really like writing mean characters or like Mean Girls. Like one of my favorite characters to write was Marilou from my Prophecy of the Forgotten Fae series. She's just like, she's like super selfish. And, I mean, she does have character growth, but I really love writing characters like that. Like, and I can see, like, I can take the piece of myself, like, okay, I can take the piece of myself that's selfish and put that in a character and just like blow it up huge. And it's so fun. So it is weird. Like some of them are really fun and some of them are just like, nope.
Yeah. I think that is really interesting. And being a writer, you come face to face with some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that it'd be like a magnifying glass sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Some of those uncomfortable parts of us.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, that component too of like, I know I'm coming back to this and if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay too. But of the character that wants to fall in love,
Yeah.
and to make the relationship work, that was something that like was a little, it didn't feel right, or you weren't wanting to examine that through the character. But you did say earlier that like you have been in these monogamous relationships, like multiple, and that's been important to you. And so what do you think, has led to some of that? Of wanting love, besides being human? I feel like that's so human.
I feel like that's just like, always been my, I think I like even the part of me that's a writer, like I've always held love on such a pedestal. Like when I was younger, I always had a crush, like ever since I was very little. Like I was boy crazy always, but I would be like obsessed with like one person. Like I wasn't just that I liked everybody. Like I would be obsessed with one person, and like until I found like the next person, I was going to be like, oh, I'm so in love with them. But like, I didn't know anything about them, but I was just like, and I would just dream out these like scenarios where we were going to like get married as soon as we were out of high school. And it was just going to be so great and perfect. Yeah, just like fantasizing about, I just loved love. And like, I was very much like, I played with my Barbies, and I tell you what, they had some drama because I only had one male doll. It was Aladdin. And he just got with all the ladies, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you were with Aladdin last night? And like, I watched a lot of like dramatic TV. I watched like 90210 and Melrose Place. So I was pretty young, probably shouldn't have been watching that. But like, I was just always like,
it was the 90s, man. It was the 90s.
Everything was about love, was about romance. So I was constructing these stories like way back then. And yeah, I just always loved love.
I was going to say, you seem to be someone who loves love. Obviously with some of your stories too. That's so funny. This is such a side note, but like, it's so funny that you brought up the Aladdin thing, because I feel like that was something my friends and I don't know, played. And then like Jafar was the bad guy and like came in and like took, I don't know, Jasmine, and I don't know. Oh my gosh. We're so dramatic as kids. And then as you're writing, how do you navigate writing with your responsibilities as like, I mean, it sounds like you have a family, you're married, you've got a kiddo. Like, how do you do it?
It was a lot harder when I had a job. I'm now a full-time author. So things like I have a very specific routine, and it has to be the same every day. Like I have to get up and like not check my email. I have to get up and write from this time to that time before my energy runs out. Like I have a very specific routine that I've learned that works for me. I have to write before my brain starts going on like other tangents, before it starts like thinking about other things. Like I know where my like special creative spot is. So I have to like stick to routines really well. If anything throws off my day, I can't write. Like if I look at my email and there's like, oh, there's this problem with like one of your accounts, everything has to get over to like solve that problem. So I have to really protect my energy and the information that I take in before I get up to write. And then back when I was working, because I know this is a problem that like a lot of beginner authors face when we're working and trying to figure out like, how do I write an entire book while I have a full-time job? And again, I had to figure out like where my special time was, because I was like, I'll write on weekends. I'm like, nope, she did not write on weekends. Like, I'll write after work. She did not write after work. And I figured out that like I had to wake up at like 3 a.m. because I worked really early. I worked at like 5 or 6 in the morning back then. So I had to get up very, very early and write first thing in the morning. And that's how I got to start like finishing books, because it was like it was that time when my brain could write. Like after my day, things have happened, I can't write. I just can't. So I had to make some really weird choices, like getting up at 3 a.m., which like there's some authors who do that, who like they work really well, like super early in the morning. So when I had a job, I did that. And then I ended up working in like as a facialist. So I went to school for aesthetics, and that was a little more flexible. I'd be like in my room in between clients, like typing, like for some reason that like I could type. Oh, that was like the only time that I've ever been able to like dip in and out of creativity for some reason. Maybe it was because it's like a relaxing atmosphere with like the soothing music and the nice smells. So yeah, I did a lot of work, and I had more days off when I was in like skincare. But yeah, it was a challenge, and it's easier also now my kid's older. So she's at school while I'm doing writing. So things like, I feel like I'm in a lucky place right now because like, yeah, I am working full time. My daughter's in school. Summer times are a little bit more challenging. We're going to experience that soon.
Yeah, that is incredible. So when you were up at like 3 a.m., was that when you were working at Trader Joe's?
Yeah.
Or was that a different?
Yeah, that was Trader Joe's. I worked like the very early shift stocking stuff before the store opened. So that's what I did every morning.
It's incredible to me. And I can see how things have shifted for you now that you're able to write, like this is your job. This is your full-time gig. And I can imagine that that's helpful with kiddo at school.
Yeah.
But like you said, when summer hits.
Yeah. Like, that's like, I have to like actually like be present and try not to get distracted, but also let myself get distracted because I want to be there for my child, and like taking more days off so we can go enjoy the sun. I'm terrible at taking days off. Terrible. But I'm trying.
Do you tend to be a workaholic then?
Yeah.
Is it a workaholic?
Yeah, it's like
perfectionistic thing,
because there's always something to do. It's like especially like if I look at my computer even once just to do like admin stuff, my brain feels like it's work. Like I've learned that I have to do days where I do not open my computer. I can look at my phone a little bit, but I have to take a day off and like not look at my computer and like take a bath and do lots of self-care, because I reach burnout really easily because once my writing creative brain is done, like there's still a billion other things I can do. So it's not like I stop working after I'm done writing for the day, because I usually stop writing around like 11 or noon, but then there's so many other things to work on, like tons more things. Even just scrolling on social media and keeping up with notifications and posting, that is still part of work for me. So it's really hard to like get out of that loop and make myself relax.
Yeah. And I wonder if you can relate to Edwina then with that, because I feel like she's a worker.
Her brain is always on, and that is like, I relate to that. Like I'll be like reading a book and be like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, my scene, and I'll be like reading while I'm thinking of a scene, and I'm like, wait a minute, we're reading a book right now. Like, get back to the book.
That's funny because I think there's actually a line in the book where it's like, did I lose you? Like,
yeah.
I lost you? And Edwina's like often like planning her.
Yeah.
Planning the scene.
That's very relatable for me.
Yeah. Well, I think I can imagine that there's this balance of like getting distracted and into some of that creativity energy, but still needing to be structured. And then especially with kids, being present is so important. But this is a business too, so you've got these different aspects. Are you, in terms of publishing, are you doing this on your own, or did you go to the traditional route?
As of now, I'm fully indie. I do have some like traditionally published translation titles. Okay. But yeah, I'm full indie right now.
So then it's like, it truly is like all of these other things beyond the writing that you have to do, which I'm learning more and more about, like interviewing these authors. And because there's also like the marketing aspect, which I feel like you do so well, because I've looked at your website. You also have like an Etsy shop, I feel like. And then you have like a bunch of plates in the air spinning that you have to keep track of.
Yeah, it's kind of
lot of moving
crazy.
parts.
It's kind of crazy. Like my shop is, which I recently moved from Etsy to my own shop, so I still have both open. But
I saw that.
yeah.
But I was like, wait, is this on her website or is this the Etsy? Yeah.
Yeah, I have both open so people can still find, because I can't announce it. You're not allowed to really give people links on Etsy or redirect people and say, hey, I'm not on Etsy anymore. I have a shop. I can't do any of that because it counts as like fee avoidance because Etsy does charge high fees. So some people are in there being like, oh, don't buy this here, buy this from my official shop. So the rule is just you can't really like the only thing I can do is I do have links in my about page on Etsy that says that I have, like, here's a shop I have. So it's really, I do feel bad because some people just have no idea that I've gone and I can't tell them. And I also don't have, it's not like I can just email them because that's like not allowed. You can't just randomly email the people who purchase from you because they haven't opted in for newsletter marketing. So there's all these like businessy things. So I have my shop there so that people can find me and I'll get messages where people like, are you ever going to restock blah, blah? I'm like, it's been in stock this whole time. It's just on my shop and I'm so sorry. Like, but it's there. And I also can't even link people there. I'm like, you can go to my about page and find my link. Like, I'm trying not to get like in trouble with Etsy.
Wild. Yeah, that's so interesting. I noticed that. I don't know. I think I was on another author's like Etsy shop and then I was just perusing and then I found yours and then I was like, oh dang, these ones are out of stock. But then I don't know. I found your website. I was like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, everything's there, but there's like hardly anything on my Etsy.
I was like, I wonder if things are shifting over to the website.
Yeah. So, and it is like, it is folks. A lot of work to keep up with. Cause like I consider like, well, I could keep, both running and maybe integrate the like, no, I need to just have one main shop. Cause even just my main shop, it's a lot of work. Like running a shop, especially because I do special editions and I do like really high volume sales. Like it's not something that like, it's not a business that I like need. Like, it's not like this is a full-time job on top of a full-time job. Yes. So it's a lot. And I am really grateful for like the readers that I have because I do think that they are really patient. Like I tell them like, you guys, these special editions and these pre-orders, I'm going to need a lot of time to fulfill them. I'm going to need months. Even if I have the books here, it's going to take me months to send them all out. And I am doing my best and I'm doing so much a week. I promise you. And I don't really get a lot of issues with people being upset or saying like, when is this coming? Like my readers are really patient, understanding that like the book business, like the signed book business, like that's just my side thing. Like writing is my full-time job. I have to write.
Yes, you have to write in order to have those beautiful special editions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so your day looks pretty structured. You wake up, you write until about noon-ish.
Yeah.
And then do you focus on the marketing?
Yeah, I'll focus on the marketing or certain days like if my kid has soccer, then that's usually means my day is going to end there and we're going to do family stuff after that. And then I'll try to pick like 2 to 3 days that are going to be my shipping days. So those are going to be days where I'm going to go into my store and figure out like what's the maximum amount of books I can ship. And I usually get my husband's help because it's gotten so big that I can't really do it on my own without like just having, I reach such massive burnout from trying to do it all on my own. So I've taught him a lot of how I like to package the books and all these things that like I can't, I have to sign the books and I really like to wrap them pretty. So I'm like, but he can put the bubble wrap on it. He can put it in the box. He can stuff it and he can tape it for me. He can construct all my boxes for me. So I'm getting a lot better about asking for help and making this a team effort because, he is a stay-at-home husband. So he can work for me and I have to remember that.
Well, that's awesome too, that he's there and sounds very supportive.
Yeah, he's very supportive. Very lucky.
Yeah. Who designs the special edition? I was curious about that too.
The special editions, they're so beautiful. So I worked with Lauren Richelieu, which I could be saying her name wrong, but she has done all the art for the special editions. And then they're so gorgeous because I do most of my other covers. Like for a Fae, Flings, and Corset Strings and Entangled with Fae, I illustrate those covers. But for the special editions, like I really, like I don't want to just do another version of I already did that cover. So it was really fun commissioning an artist to do the entire thing. Like for me to step back and just have someone, and I love commissioning art. I love seeing my art done by someone else. It's amazing. It's so much fun. But when it comes to my covers, I'm like, well, I can do them. So I have to ask myself when it comes to designing a new cover, I'm like, do I want to do this cover? And if the answer is yes, then I do it. But if I'm like, no, I don't feel like it, then I like these ones, this shelf
Awesome.
here, I hired someone to do those because for some reason that wasn't sparking joy, as Marie Kondo would put it. Like when I was thinking about doing the covers, I'm like, I don't want to do those. So I'm going to hire someone to do it, but I can do them. So if I feel excited, then I'll do my own covers. But yeah, I love the special edition versions. They're so pretty. And I love being able to step back and be like, I didn't have anything to do with that. That art is all somebody else's.
Well, and I can imagine too, it's so cool seeing what someone else imagines for your stories.
It's really fun.
I would want to see that. Like, oh, that's how you envision. That's so cool. Like being able to see that visual. And you already said you're a visual person, right?
Yeah.
So I could see that would be pretty cool. And then also taking it from the standpoint of like, if this isn't sparking joy, then commissioning it out. Because earlier you were also saying that burnout is real for you. And which is interesting because I feel like you do have so much going on that you have to be very particular about where you're spending your energy and putting are you more introverted or extroverted or somewhere in the middle? Like where do you get your energy?
I'm very introverted, but I also am like, I can be a charismatic introvert. So when I go to book events and I meet people in person, like I can be really friendly and come across as outgoing, because I genuinely like interacting with people. And I have learned how to be a person that is like, when I was younger, I had a really hard time like knowing what my face was doing. And like I would come across as mean a lot because to me, I would be just enjoying myself and like smiling, but it didn't look like that to other people. So I've had to learn, and I think this comes from like the autism masking thing. I've had to learn how to like, I know what it feels like to smile now, and I know what it feels like to come across as someone who's enjoying, so that my outside can match how I'm feeling on the inside. Because I do really like engaging with people. But then afterwards I do crash. So I have to be prepared to regain all of my energy with days off and being alone. And I do need like a lot of time alone. I need a lot of time to just like read my books. So I have learned a lot of things about myself on how to control my energy and how to like regain that energy. So yeah, I definitely refuel my energy, but with alone time, quiet time, all those things.
Yeah. Self-care is so important, and that you've discovered, what you need to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
To refuel. Oh, I was also going to say too, as you were talking, I feel like that was another Edwina thing where she really like was animated talking with her fans. And the book lines and like when she was meeting people.
That was another one of the things where I was like, wait a minute, am I just like writing about my own experience here? Like it felt so true. Cause it is like, it's so magical and so much fun to meet people and to see people reacting. Cause like, I mean, I'm just here at home. Like it's not every day that you see someone come up to you and like get teary eyed because they're meeting you. I'm like, wait, me? Like, are you sure you have the right author? Like, you feel like you're getting teary eyed about meeting me? Like, I'm just me. I'm just a normal person. And it's like so surreal and so cool and amazing to experience that. And I really loved getting to write that into Edwina because it's just a love letter to my readers, basically. Like, that's how y'all make me feel. It's amazing and it's magical.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I was wondering if that was a piece of you too, which is so interesting. It sounds like it is.
Yeah.
I know you were mentioning too, like childhood and possible masking, and now like really trying to have your insides match your outsides because you were just living life.
Yeah.
You were just a little baby living your life, but then people were like assuming maybe what you were thinking or feeling, which was not accurate because of the. Were you ever, I'm wondering, like as a child, have you always had such a vivid imagination? Like, were there times in childhood where you were, I don't know, off in your own imaginary world or?
Yeah, I was a constant daydreamer. And like, I would just sit and do nothing and daydream, or I would draw pictures and daydream. And like, of course they were about like relationships. I had my own fashion brand. It was called Odette Jeans Company. My last name's Odette, so it was Odette Jeans Company. And I would draw these like sultry poses of people in like embraces with like these cool outfits. And like I always thought they were like so naughty. I'm like, oh my gosh, because you know, I was exposed to like magazine
Teen Bop.
Yeah, exactly. And like they're doing all these like risque poses together, and I would like draw them like, oh my gosh, I'm so naughty. But I was like, you know, those are my experiences of just imagining couples together. It was very similar to that Pixar, I think it was, Turning Red, where she's like drawing these like fantasy illustrations of like a guy. I think he had like a mermaid tail, and she was all like embarrassed about him. Like, that was my childhood. Like, that kid is just me.
You're like, that's me right
yeah.
there. So cool. Yeah, definitely. It sounds like the romance genre started young for you.
So young.
I love that. Yeah, that's so great. So do you have this is kind of a rando question, but I'm here for it. Okay. Do you have any like book crushes? Like in terms of like character crushes?
Well, Mr. Darcy forever.
Some of your own books?
I love Mr. Darcy. Let's see. Pretty much any male character that Jessica Sundin writes, her love interests are amazing. I really, really love The Night Market and Bound by Ravens. Her book boyfriends are always so swoony. I love them so much. Gilbert forever. I love Gilbert. And then this one is not a novel. It is a manga. I'm a really big manga fan, but Hawk from Yona of the Dawn. Greatest book boyfriend ever. He's so great.
Yeah, so interesting. I just got a special edition for Bound by Ravens.
Oh, it's so. I think I have that one too. Yes, it's so pretty, and I love that book. It's so great.
I think that was earlier when I was saying that I stumbled on your Etsy shop. That's where I got I was looking at her shop and did the special edition. I'm excited to read it.
You'll probably like it. Her banter is great. Her banter is so good.
Love banter. I love banter. And I love banter between the characters.
Hers is top tier.
I know earlier we were talking about some of those steamy scenes. How does it feel writing steamy scenes, by the way, in the romance genre?
It's just, I don't know. I get really giddy about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like, I literally have to like stop and I just like shake my hands around, like kick my feet because it's just so fun for me. I just really love it. But yeah, it is, A Rivalry of Hearts is the steamiest book that I've written yet. So, and I knew that when I was writing, I'm like, it's man, steamy. This one's getting up there. People who've read my other ones and thought they were too steamy, I feel like most people who come to my work like a little steam. I don't have a lot of like readers. I mean, there's definitely some, and they've told me like, well, this one was a little too spicy for me. I'm sorry. But I do feel like the majority of my reader base does like spicier books. But, I was like, okay, so the ones who don't though are going to be like, this one's going to push it. But also my husband reads every single book I write. And I would have warned him so many times when I was writing this. I'm like, you cannot look me in the eye after you read these scenes. And I was like, you're going to be so uncomfortable. I just kept forewarning him. And yeah, he took it like a champ.
That's amazing. Did it spice up the bedroom for you in real life?
Well, all I'll say is he said free pass to me one time, and I got I like started blushing. Like I'm usually pretty like I don't know, I'm pretty mean to him in a romantic way. I mean, that's just like our dynamics. I'm usually just like kind of the like, and he's always wanting affection. And I'm like squirming away. I'm like, I'm done. He needs more affection than I do, and I'm like a feral creature. I'm just like, okay, you've been hugging me too long. But yeah, I got like really giddy and blushy. I was like, oh, you just said free pass to me. And if you only people who read A Rivalry of Hearts will get that one, but once you read it, you'll know. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's.
I love it. Good one, husband. So it sounds like he's more of like the sunshiny.
Kind of, we switch because I get really sunshiny too. Like he's so stoic. Like his personality is very stoic, and I'm usually like goofy. I'm like singing and frolicking around the house. But then yeah, when it comes to affection, that swaps. Like I'm very affectionate, but I also don't need it as much. Like I'll when I realized I've been, cause especially when I get distracted and I'm like working, I'm like, do not distract me from my work. Like I can give you a hug like this, but I'm still typing with one hand. And if I realize I've been like that too long, I'm like, okay, I make an effort to actually like go give hugs. And I love hugs, but yeah, my brain just works differently for that.
Sure. And I wonder if some of that's like that ADHD piece.
Oh,
though,
yeah.
You know, of like that plays a role in relationships too. When you're focused on something, you want to be focused on the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
And then it can be kind of difficult to switch gears a little bit.
It's so difficult.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I was going to say, I would think that you would have to have some sunshiny to be able to write the novels or the books that you write.
Yeah.
Because they're so whimsical.
Yeah. I definitely
like
I have
magical.
that side for sure.
Yes. That's interesting. Yeah. Do you feel pressure to appease your readers, or do you write first and foremost for yourself? How do you do that? Is it pressure? Do you feel the pressure?
I very much write for myself, but I do let myself be encouraged by the flow if it's going in a direction I want to go. So I've always I'm still not really, when it comes to being a reader, I don't read super, super spicy. I just haven't really gotten there yet. I'm slowly getting interested in more like spicy books. Like my threshold is getting a little bit higher, but I feel like I've always wanted to write a little bit spicier than what my books were. But I started in YA and I was like, oh, well, we can't do like spicy books in YA. But then like YA started getting a little spicier. I'm like, oh, so you're telling me I can step it up a notch. And I started noticing that there were like in the books that like Entangled with Fae, that was me getting even spicier. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to get spicy here. It's not going to be fade to black, but it's also not going to be super explicit because it's still technically YA. But then I would notice readers saying more often than them saying it was too spicy. I would see people like, well, I would like it more if it was spicier. And I'm like, really? I have to write spicier than that? So there was definitely like a little bit of pressure, but it was kind of pressure in a direction I wanted to go. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to start a new series with A Rivalry of Hearts and have it be adult, strictly adult, not that like, because a lot of my books, even though they're like YA, just because there is no new adult category in the books, like there's no new adult category in the bookstore. It's either YA or it's adult. And mine kind of straddles the line. But this one, I'm like, we're going to go on the other side of the line. I'm going to write as spicy as I want. I'm not going to be pressured to write spicier than what I'm comfortable with, though. That's the thing, is I never go farther than what I want to do, because then I'm not even going to like it. And there's certain things where I'm just like, it doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. Like, I know there are readers who love that, but.
So yeah, I was wondering too, if that was, how A Rivalry of Hearts kind of came to be, that you were wanting to write maybe more of like an adult book. But I did notice some of, especially with A Dream So Wicked, it says YA, but it's like, I don't know, like it is sort of straddling that line where there are a lot of like innuendo, and like they even talk about sex. Like, so it is interesting. But I was wondering how that has, A Rivalry of Hearts, what led to that. Yeah,
because it has been hard, because I do love writing in that like new adult space. But it is challenging because it is like, if I market it as adult, people who are expecting heavy spice are going to be disappointed. And then people who are looking for something very pure and YA are going to be disappointed. So that has been really difficult, because I love writing those books as they are. That like was a great sweet spot for me. But then I did start wanting to write like more strictly adult books. And then when I got the idea for A Rivalry of Hearts, like I already knew that character was going to be an adult aged character. I was like, this is my chance. I can write something that is very specifically adult. I can write a little bit spicier without having to worry about making it too spicy for the people who are still in the like upper YA, not really wanting it to get spicier than like new adult. So that was really fun for me to be able to like not have to hold back on that, but also like allowing myself to also not feel like I had to write like spicier than I wanted. So that one was really fun. And I'm sure every author goes through like a phase where they start to feel like, no, this is where my sweet spot is. But like, I feel like A Rivalry of Hearts was like so me. Like I just felt so me. Like I was writing the book of my heart, that this is the genre. I could let the humor be as ridiculous as I wanted it to. but yeah, I really liked being able to start a new series and have it be like where the author that I am right now wanted to be.
I love that. So do you anticipate continuing to write maybe more adult books?
I do
Do
think
you think
so.
is that the direction you go in?
I would really like to, yes. And even though Entangled with Fae is technically ongoing, like I'm not calling it done forever, because I want to be able to like write in that new adult space again if I want to do more fairy tales. And I do have more fairy tales I want to do. But right now, I really like writing the adult fantasy romcom. And I don't really know what's going to happen next after the book I'm writing now, just because who knows? It might be book 3 in the Fae Flings and Corset Strings series. I'm not sure. I don't know what that one's going to be about yet. But I do feel like I might want to play with doing like an adult epic fantasy or something like that, like a romantasy, of course. It's got to be very heavy on the romance.
Yes. That would be really interesting. You know, I think before A Rivalry of Hearts, I haven't read too many fantasy rom-coms, honestly.
There's not a ton of them, especially like when I read a fantasy rom-com, I really want it to evoke everything I love about fantasy, but also everything I love about a contemporary rom-com. Like I kind of wrote that because I am that reader. I love fantasy books, but I also love straight up contemporary rom-coms. Like The Hating Game is one of my favorite books. And I noticed that there's a lot of other readers who read both. Like there's so many of us. So I'm like, I want more that are right in the middle of that, like that have a rom-com plot, a very strict rom-com plot with the meet cute. I want the formula. I want it to have the formula, and then I want it to have fantasy elements. And there have been something like that. Like, what's the book? That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. Is that what it is? Like that series. I love that series. So good.
I'll have to check it out. That's so interesting that you brought up The Hating Game. One of my best friends, Kristen Caruso, she also has a podcast. Anyway, she's amazing. You should check her out. But she and her husband, they're doing a history. Anyway, you guys should check it out. History podcast. But she got me that book, The Hating Game, for my birthday last year, I think it was. And then I was telling her about your book. I was like, Kristen, you need to read A Rivalry of Hearts when it comes out. It reminds me of The Hating Game. Like there's some aspects of it, but it is fantasy rom-com, which I have never read before, which I think is totally brilliant and going to meet a need of like it's very niche. Like I think it's gonna, I wish that there were more, but it's cool that you're writing with that in mind. So I just wanted to let you know that is literally how I described it to my girlfriend. So
and that's like, so cool. That was in my head when I first thought of it. I was like, this is like the baby between like The Hating Game, but like make it in a Fae world. Because that was probably the first, contemporary rom-com that I fell in love with. Like I love that book so much. And I like ever since I've just been reading a lot more. So I had to like the elevator scene. Y'all know that was a little bit of a throwback to that elevator scene because that was like the first, I think that was probably also the first like spicy book that I read. I was like, dang, that was good. So I had to do a little throwback to my favorite scene from that.
Yes. That's so cool. I was going to ask you too of like, if you're wanting to alternate, or I don't know, I guess how you write is going to be how you write. But if you were wanting to alternate between like a romantasy, you know, maybe more epic romantasy, and then kind of switch to rom-com as like a palate cleanser for yourself too, or how you would want to go about doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of did that last year. Last year I was working on the 3rd book in my epic fantasy series. And then I was also working on A Dream So Wicked. And then I did A Dream So Wicked. So I alternated Entangled with Fae, which kind of is in that same, like there's a lot higher stakes in those books. They're not purely like really easy, cozy rom-com. But they do have a lot of those same elements. Like they do have a lot of the same fluffiness. So I did alternate that for like the last 2 years. And I would do that again. That was because I do like switching it when I do get bored, of like writing the same genre. Cause like that does happen. But lately I've been like, nope, I want to do more, fantasy rom-com, but that's why I'm like, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I was thinking for a while that I would go back and do another Entangled with Fae book after this next book, but I'm like, I don't know. What if I don't want to? What if I want to write something different after this? So I'm not committing 100% to what's going to happen after.
You're going to go with the flow.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to know that I really appreciated the fantasy rom-com, and it was so refreshing. I read typically pretty like epic romantasy books, and so this was so nice, and it just really met my need for whimsy. I was like, oh, this is so nice. So anyway, I just want you to know that.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah. And then earlier you were saying too, considering other fairy tale retellings. Could you share which ones that you might want to write?
So the next one is the one I've gotten the most requests on, and I've laid like a hint of groundwork. And I think like I just don't have a story idea. But that would be Rapunzel. And in A Dream So Wicked, there's like a hint of a character who's a changeling who lived in a tower. And I was like, that could be Rapunzel. Like, I like to have some kind of little breadcrumb of the next character in the previous book, but I just don't have a plot for that one yet. And I do really like to follow my like sparks of inspiration when I can, when I haven't already committed in like putting a pre-order out, like a heavy deadline. So I would like to do that one. I do get a lot of requests for it. Because Rapunzel, I think a lot of people, mostly I think people like Tangled. I don't know how many people actually care about the original fairy tale, which is where the retelling would be based on, would be the original fairy tale. I can take some little inspiration from, the Disney versions, but that is their IP. So I cannot do a retelling of Tangled, but I can do a retelling of Rapunzel with little inspirations and throwbacks to Tangled. So yeah, I do want to do that one, but still, again, not set in stone.
Yeah. So interesting. What do you love about that genre of fairy tale retellings?
I love the challenge of taking something that exists and changing it and doing a unique twist on it. I love doing twists on things that are familiar. And like I grew up on fairy tales, love Disney. And I remember like my daydreamer brain when I was a child, like I'd always have something where I'm like, I don't really like that. I wish this would happen or blah, blah, blah. Like I always wanted Ursula to have more of a backstory. Like I was like, no, she is King Triton's ex-lover. Like they have a history there, obviously. And so in Kiss of the Selkie, I got to express that by the sea witch character. She has a history with the king. So like, cause I'm like, obviously there's definitely something going on there. Why else would she be so mad? Like he totally like dumped her or something.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I know as I was reading A Dream So Wicked, and I think I shared this with you via email, but I loved Sleeping Beauty as a child, like the Disney movie. And I have a distinct memory of watching that one scene where the fairies are creating the cake and getting her dress. And I felt like there were some moments like that early on in A Dream So Wicked, but I was wondering, like, how did you, it sounds like you take some aspects of that as inspiration, but because of the IP, obviously you can't, it's not like an exact retelling of the Disney stories. But yeah, I was curious about that, of like how you've used those Disney movies or fairy tales as inspiration for you.
Yeah, I'd really like to take the things that made me like the cozy aesthetics or the little clever, funny things that happened, and trying to infuse them into my story by like, twisting them a little bit. So it's not just like a blatant scene for scene reenactment, but that people can be like, I know what that's referencing. Like that's a very clear reference of like that part in the Disney movie, because a lot of us who love the fairy tales, like we actually love the Disney version. Like that's the version we like that's the version we grew up on. And like, I think that fairy tale retellings can be fun, like completely disregarding the Disney versions. But I do really like at least paying like some mind to those little parts that like made us so happy in the Disney versions. At least something to connect us with those like archetypes that we just grew up on and loved. So yeah, I always want to make sure I put in some little tidbits, some tasty little treats that link you to the version that you most likely is your favorite. Cause yeah, those are the parts that I loved.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool that you have that thoughtfulness between and yeah, of what you've created and what you've written, and that you have that thoughtfulness. I think that that's really cool. And then probably this might be like one of the last, I could keep talking to you. I could keep on talking to you, but what would you say is, and this might be a very difficult question, but what would you say is one of your favorite scenes from any of your books?
The easiest one to remember would just be from A Rivalry of Hearts, since it's the newest, but
Okay.
I really loved probably the elevator scene. I keep talking about that one, but it was the one that was like, I wasn't really expecting it from the beginning, but like it just came out of nowhere. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And I just really loved writing that one. I was just so excited. I guess the other one I would say that like totally made me so giddy, which is from A Taste of Poison. And it's mostly just the fact that they get handcuffed together. Like he's the huntsman. He's going after the Snow White character. Her name's Astrid, and he's supposed to bring her back to her stepmom. And he handcuffs her to him so that she can't run away. And I love that trope. You don't see it a lot, but when I do, I freaking love it. The handcuffed together trope.
Me
and then
too.
they have, like, for whatever reason, they lose the key, or they have to like stay handcuffed together. And just having to do like certain things, like they're trying not to show that they're handcuffed together, so they're holding hands, so forced hand holding. They have to spend the night together in a brothel, in a bed, and they're like handcuffed together.
One bed.
Yeah, just one bed, while also being handcuffed
What are they going to do?
What could possibly happen?
Love it. Yeah, forced proximity is one of my faves as well.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, gosh, this has been so much fun talking with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share for your listeners, or for the listeners, for your readers?
Thanking everybody who has read the arc of A Rivalry of Hearts, because this is the most I've ever sent out, but it's given me the most feedback early. So it's been kind of crazy and overwhelming, seeing people's reactions so early. Cause normally I only have a very small advanced reader team, but this time I wanted to get it out there early more. And so thank you so much to everyone who read an advanced copy. It's been amazing, like getting tagged in reviews. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like the book is already out because so many people have read it, and the feedback has been amazing. It's like giving me that like really good anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, people like it. This is crazy. And thank you to everybody who is going to read it on June 12th. So thank you to everyone who's been excited, who's been tagging me in posts that are like June releases. Like, you're excited about my book. Oh my God, I'm so excited that you're excited.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of buzz. Lots of people are loving it. I have a lot of, other friends, like book friends, that have absolutely loved that book and are currently raving about it on their Bookstagram.
Oh, so. Yay.
Yay. Yeah. Well, this was so much fun. I'm sad to be done, but maybe we could do this again soon sometime.
Absolutely. You asked some really good questions. We got deep.
Thanks. We did. I love talking with people and authors and getting to know you guys better. I mean, I just love it. So anyway, everyone, thank you so much for listening. You can find her books on her website, which I can also share a link to. And Amazon, Barnes & Noble, I mean, probably all the places, but you can definitely go to her website, tessonjaodette.com.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to the Romantasy Library and my interview with Tessonja Odette. She is absolutely amazing, and as we discussed, she recently released A Rivalry of Hearts, an adult fantasy rom-com with the hating game vibes. This is the first book of a brand new series for her, and the second book will be coming out, I don't know when, but it is titled My Fair Isle Romance, and hopefully we can have her back on the pod for that when that comes out. She has also authored the Entangled with Fae series, Prophecy of the Forgotten Fae series, the Fair Isle Trilogy, Fae, Flings, and Corset String series, which is her new one, and Twisting Minds. We talked about her inspiration for writing, her love of romance, her favorite scenes, finding herself in Edwina, Spicy Spice, and so much more. This interview was so much fun, and I love taking a deep dive into her life. I feel like we would be friends. You can find her book, all of her books, at her website, tessonjaodette.com, at her shop, tessonjaodetteshop.com. And you can find her on Instagram. Her books can be found at any major book retailer, her website, obviously, or indie bookstore. So, guys, thank you so much for joining my podcast, focused on celebrating and promoting authors who write fanciful stories that make my heart sing. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Romantasy Library, and there are many more to come with amazing authors, as well as deep dives into various writing processes, general life conversations, a spicy spice, mental health discussions, favorite tropes, and many more tangents. If you're feeling generous, please feel free to leave a 5-star rating and review. Thank you so much for being here and for helping to celebrate these amazing authors. Thanks so much, guys.